The world order, well, it's always shifting, isn't it? But what feels really new right now is that the rule book for the Middle East, it's being torn up and rewritten as we speak.
Absolutely. And this rewrite, it seems laser focused on really two core conservative priorities.
For sure.
Maximizing American strength globally, number one, and number two, making sure our allies in the Gulf and, crucially, Israel are safe, secure for the long haul.
Got it. So that's our mission for this deep dive then.
That's exactly it. We're digging into this emerging U.S. foreign policy doctrine. We want to understand how that goal, countering Iran, pushing for stability in the Middle East,
Yeah.
how that fits into the bigger picture.
The bigger global strategy.
Right. And it involves a strategy of, well, deliberate U.S. retrenchment, pulling back. But here's the twist, the really key part.
Okay.
That pullback, it's only seen as possible because of the strategic weakening of Iran, America's main adversary in the region.
Okay, let's unpack that. The core idea seems to be this spheres of influence doctrine that the sources mention. So, high level, the U.S. focuses on total dominance in the Western Hemisphere, our own backyard, basically.
Right. Conserve resources, step back from some of those traditional security roles elsewhere, which, effectively gives Beijing a bit more room in their own neighborhoods.
That sounds like a huge strategic trade-off.
It is a massive one. But, and this is critical, the Middle East is the big exception, the glaring exception to this retrenchment rule.
So we're seeing troop drawdowns there, but it's not abandonment.
Exactly. It's not abandonment. It's framed as a calculated move, one based on, well, perceived success. Success in containing Tehran.
Okay, so here's the news hook, right? The grounding for this whole policy shift. Over the last couple of years, Iran has apparently suffered, a relentless series of strategic setbacks.
That's the language used, yes. And this pressure, it's apparently just hammered their economy, really withered it.
And crucially, forced them back to the negotiating table on the nuclear deal.
Force them back, yes. And dealing with an administration that's described pretty openly as very unfriendly towards them, that says a lot about the pressure they must be under.
So this success story in the region, that's what allows this new strategy. Stability through local strength.
Precisely. The sources really emphasize this point. Israel and the Sunni powers, they're described as ascendant. They've, quote, effectively defanged Iran and rolled back Tehran's influence.
Defanged Iran. Strong words.
Very strong. And the immediate goal flowing from that.
Leverage this new power balance to push the Abraham Accords forward. Fast.
Exactly. Expand them rapidly. The administration back in April 2025 apparently expressed pretty high confidence that Saudi Arabia would join the Accords very quickly.
Which would let the U.S. protect its core interests, trade routes, energy markets, Israel's security.
All the vital stuff, yeah. But without needing that huge, expensive military footprint on the ground.
Okay, let's pin down that strategic shift a bit more clearly. This spheres of influence idea isn't just drawing lines on a map, is it?
No. It's about efficiency, about achieving stability through, well, rules, agreements like expanding the Accords rather than relying so heavily on military force.
So it maintains U.S. interests, but shares the burden more with allies, conserves American resources.
That's the core logic. Achieve the goals, but do it more efficiently.
Makes sense fiscally. But, okay, if the doctrine needs giving ground, maybe, to Beijing and Moscow elsewhere, how does that trade-off help the U.S. focus so much on Iran? It feels like a real laser focus.
Well, it is. I mean, by signaling a clear priority on the Americas, the U.S. clarifies where its core interests lie. That frees up political capital, economic pressure to really zero in on areas of maximum strategic concern, like the Gulf.
And the sources point to specific triggers for Iran feeling this pressure, enough to come back to talks.
Oh, yeah. We need to look at the evidence, the actions that apparently forced Iran to kind of recognize the power imbalance.
You mentioned the withered economy, but hang on, are we sure it's that withered? I mean, they still seem to be funding some pretty significant proxy operations, right? Where's the direct link in the sources saying this economic pressure is the thing that forced the diplomatic shift?
Yeah, good question. The link presented is pretty explicit, though. It wasn't just one thing overnight. It was a buildup.
Okay.
First, you had the U.S. pulling out of the Iran nuclear deal, the JCPOA, back in 2018. That immediately brought back those really tough sanctions. Oil revenue, banking access, boom. Billions cut from their budget.
Right, the maximum pressure campaign.
Exactly. Then second, you have the assassination of General Qasem Soleimani in 2020. Huge blow. took out a key figure, maybe the key figure, in their regional strategy. That caused chaos, sure, but also real long-term damage to how they operated.
So economic pain plus taking out a major player?
Plus, you add in sustained Israeli security operations targeting Iranian assets and personnel, especially in places like Syria. The signal to Tehran, according to this view, was clear. The forces against them were serious, coordinated, and willing to escalate.
Leaving negotiation is maybe the only way out
Mm.
to ease that internal economic pressure.
That seems to be the interpretation presented in the sources, yes. The only viable path forward for them at that point.
Okay, that does paint a clearer picture of the strategic pressure. So let's move down to the operational level. If the economy's taken such a hit, how's that affecting their proxy network? Is it really crippling them?
Well, let's start with Hezbollah, up in Lebanon. Intel reports apparently confirm their missile stockpiles have been significantly weakened. That's big.
Weakened how? Degraded, used up.
Probably a combination. But what might be even more damaging long-term is the threat to their ability to rearm. Their main supply line ran through Syria.
Ah, right. The land bridge. Iran, Iraq, Syria, Lebanon. That was crucial for them.
Absolutely crucial. And if things have changed significantly in Syria,
Which the sources suggest they have, saying the civil war is finally over.
yes. And with Assad out of power, Iran's free reign there, its influence, it's apparently declining pretty sharply.
So that cuts off the highway for weapons and cash to Hezbollah.
Severely hinders it, at the very least. It's a major logistical breakdown for Iran's regional network.
And beyond logistics, what about Hezbollah itself? The war with Israel, the loss of Nasrallah that must have hit hard.
Oh, massively. Psychologically, operationally. The sources say that conflict just devastated Hezbollah's ability to coerce, to threaten. They lost commanders, equipment.
And support at home.
Critically, yes. The sources mention an overwhelming rejection now among Lebanese people, blaming Hezbollah for bringing more conflict to Lebanon. When you lose that domestic base,
Your value to Tehran probably drops significantly.
you'd have to assume so, right? Your regional utility plummets.
Okay, so that covers weakening in the north. But then you look south to Yemen, the Houthis. They seem more active than ever, hitting ships in the Red Sea. And the source material mentions, frankly, staggering mobilization numbers.
Yeah, this is where you see the real tension, maybe, in the overall U.S. strategy. The Houthis have definitely stepped up their game, enlisting, 370,000 new fighters?
In just the summer of 2024, yeah, and ideologically training over 1 million kids.
It's huge.
Yeah.
But the U.S. strategy, as presented, still seems to classify them as maybe a contained threat.
Contained. 370,000 new fighters. That sounds less like a militia and more like, I don't know, a state army mobilizing. How does the strategy square that kind of growth with the idea that Iran's overall influence is shrinking?
It seems to be a distinction between, let's say, strategic depth and localized capability.
Right.
Meaning the U.S. is using counterterrorism airstrikes against Houthi positions in Yemen. The idea is to limit their ability to project power much beyond Yemen and the immediate Red Sea shipping lanes.
So they're a major pain for shipping, a tactical nightmare there.
Yes, absolutely. A significant tactical threat, but perhaps lacking the regional weight, the political sophistication of, say, a fully powered Hezbollah, or the ability to seriously threaten Israel or the big Sunni Gulf states.
So the U.S. calculation is nasty problem, but geographically limited. Contained enough to allow pulling resources from elsewhere, like Syria.
That appears to be the justification, yes. The problem is seen as confined, allowing for that broader retrenchment.
Okay. So if the proxies are seen as strategically neutralized or contained, that paves the way for the other big push, peace and Israeli security through normalization.
Right. Getting Saudi Arabia into the Abraham Accords, that's clearly the main event they're aiming for.
The grand prize, as you put it earlier.
Exactly. And the administration, back in April 25, sounded very confident. Very quickly was the phrase used about the Saudis joining.
Based on the idea that the shared threat from Iran now outweighs everything else.
That seems to be the underlying assumption, yes, that the strategic alignment against Tehran is strong enough to overcome other obstacles.
But those other obstacles, I mean, they're pretty huge, aren't they? Specifically the Palestinian issue. Given Israel's public stance against a Palestinian state, isn't that confidence maybe a bit optimistic? Based on the source material.
You're right. That's the major sticking point highlighted. The Saudi position, at least formally, publicly, is still very clear.
Demanding an independent Palestinian state. 1967 borders East Jerusalem as capital.
All of that, plus an end to the Israeli aggression in Gaza and a full withdrawal of Israeli forces. Those are stated as non-negotiable conditions.
Which seems completely at odds with the administration's reported confidence.
It does. The sources present this gap as the biggest hurdle by far. It suggests normalization isn't quite as imminent as the very quickly statement implies. It likely needs a major shift in Israeli policy first.
So a long road still on that front, perhaps. But regardless of the normalization timeline, the belief that Iran is contained is having real-world effects on U.S. troop presence. Physical proof of retrenchment.
Absolutely. Tangible effects. We're seeing the drawdown happen because of this strategic shift. The Defense Department announced plans to cut U.S. troops in Syria by half, down to under 1,000.
And the justification.
This is the telling part. The official reason given is that Iran and its proxies are now posing, quote, less of a dangerous threat to its neighbors.
Which brings us full circle, really. Back to the core idea of this whole deep dive.
Exactly. The move towards retrenchment in the Middle East, it's all predicated on this belief, this assessment, that Iran and its proxies have been successfully restrained, maybe even crippled.
It's the definition of security through burden sharing from that perspective.
Right. Israel, the Sunni partners, they're seen as being in a stronger position now to handle regional security themselves, which, achieves that conservative goal, protect allies, but conserve U.S. resources.
The U.S. isn't creating a vacuum, then, in this view. It's just changing its role.
Changing the structure, yeah. Moving from being the primary cop on the beat, maybe, to being more like the strategic guarantor, relying on the growing strength of regional partners.
Okay, so here's the final thought then, the thing to chew on. If, and it's a significant if based on our discussion, if neutralizing Iran and empowering allies does allow the U.S. to pull back thousands of troops, how does the U.S. make sure that withdrawal actually leads to long-term stability? Especially for key allies like Israel. How do you guarantee security without having that military trigger right there, ready for a sudden crisis nobody saw coming?
That's the billion-dollar question, isn't it? That's the real challenge facing this potential new era of U.S. foreign policy in the region. How do you manage risk from further away?